So, what if an AI could design the next AI? One that's even smarter? And then that AI designs the next one and the next one. That is the grand, incredible vision we're diving into today. Yeah, there's this great quote from the researchers that really captures it. They say, the discovered ideas could, in turn, improve frontier AI models themselves, enabling recursive self-improvement. I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? An AI that literally gets smarter by inventing better versions of itself. Just this loop of endless innovation. Okay, but that leads to the big, kind of billion-dollar question the whole field is grappling with, right? Can an AI actually discover brand new science? Or is it just, really good at remixing and repackaging all the stuff it learned from us? But before we can even get to that dream, we hit a wall. A huge reality check that researchers are calling the ideation-execution gap. And it's a really fundamental problem. You see, large language models, they're amazing at coming up with ideas that sound super convincing, right? But then when an actual human expert tries to build it, a lot of the time it just doesn't work. It falls flat. So this gap, it's really the main obstacle here. You could almost think of it as the villain of our story. It's this frustrating disconnect between an idea that sounds totally plausible and an experiment that actually works. And that's what's holding AI back from being a true partner in research. So the question becomes, how do we bridge that gap? Well, the bottleneck has always been the human, right? The poor researcher who has to sit there and manually test every single one of these AI ideas. But what if we could just take the human out of that part of the loop? What if we could automate the whole testing process from start to finish? And that's exactly what a team of researchers at Stanford did. They built this thing they call an automated proving ground. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a tireless robotic science intern. One that can test AI ideas at a scale that's just impossible for a person. The official name is the Automated Idea Executor. And yeah, I know this diagram looks kind of complex, but its job is actually super simple. It's basically a factory for running AI experiments. An idea goes in one end, and a cold, hard result comes out the other. And crucially, there's no human in the middle. So let's break down how this robotic intern actually works. First up, you have the implementer. It takes the AI's idea, which is just in plain English, and turns it into code that can actually run. Next, the scheduler steps in. Its job is to find a free GPU, those super powerful chips that run all this AI stuff, and it queues up the experiment. And finally, the worker. Well, it does the work. It runs the experiment and reports back what happened. The craziest part? This whole cycle can take just a few minutes, not the days or weeks it would take a human. Okay, so now they've got this incredible system up and running. The first thing they tried for finding new ideas was something called evolutionary search. And it is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, survival of the fittest. But instead of animals, it's for AI algorithms. And when you put this method side by side with how humans work, man, the difference is just night and day. A human expert, we're limited by time, we have our own biases, and the feedback loop is super slow. But this AI search, it can test hundreds of ideas at the same time. It systematically explores weird new possibilities, and it gets those results back in minutes. We're talking about a completely new way to do research. So, did it work? Oh, yeah. The results were absolutely stunning. Let me give you an example. On a math reasoning task, the AI's evolutionary search found a method that hit almost 70% accuracy. The old baseline was just 48%. That is a huge jump. And on another task, it found a way to pre-train a model that was way faster. It cut the time to reach the goal by almost half. And I really want to stress this. That jump from 48% to nearly 70%, that's not just a small little improvement. That is a massive leap forward. The system didn't just find something that was, a little bit better. It found a genuine breakthrough. And we can't forget about the speed either. Cutting the training time by almost 45%. You have to understand, in the world of AI, time on these big computers costs a ton of money. So a speed up like that, it's a really, really big deal. And get this, it wasn't just beating some simple old baseline. The method this AI discovered, it actually performed better than the top project from a graduate-level AI class at Stanford. Think about that. It's not just as good as a human expert, it's actually beating them. But like any good story, there's a twist. The researchers didn't just test evolutionary search. They also tried another really popular, really powerful technique, reinforcement learning. And what happened next was, well, it was fascinating because it fell right into a trap. When they looked at the data, it was confusing. On one hand, you have this chart showing the average reward going up and up. That looks good, right? It looks like the AI is learning. But then you look at the max reward, the score of the single best idea it found, and that line is just flat. It wasn't finding any big wins. So what on earth was going on? It turns out the problem was actually pretty simple. The AI learned to play it safe. It figured out how to get a pretty good predictable score every single time. But in the process, it completely stopped looking for those wild, high-risk, high-reward ideas, the ones that lead to real breakthroughs. This is actually a classic problem in AI. It's called mode collapse. And the best way I've heard it explained is like training a dog. Let's say you want to teach it all these amazing new tricks, but your dog figures out that if it just sits, it gets a treat every single time, a guaranteed reward. So what does it do? It stops trying to learn backflips or anything cool, and it just sits, over and over and over. That is exactly what the AI did here. It found a couple of safe ideas that worked okay, and it just kept proposing those. And you can see it plain as day in the data. By the end of the experiment, a whopping 94% of the AI's suggestions were just two simple, recycled ideas. Just little technical tweaks that gave it that safe, reliable score. Any kind of creative exploration, it was just gone. The diversity of ideas had totally collapsed. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway from this whole quest for automated discovery? Well, there are a few really important lessons here. First, and this is a big one, we now know that it's actually possible to build these automated systems to test AI ideas at a crazy scale. Second, it looks like that evolutionary search approach is a really powerful way to find actual breakthroughs. But third, we learned that standard reinforcement learning, it can be dangerous. It can fall into this trap where it just optimizes for playing it safe instead of searching for a real discovery. And that's the key, isn't it? The goal isn't just to get a good average score. It's to find that single, brilliant, game-changing idea. And all of this really leads us to the final, most important question, the one this research leaves us hanging with. It's not enough to build an AI that can just follow instructions and get a good grade on the test. The real challenge, the thing we need to figure out next, is this. How do we teach an AI to be not just correct, but truly creative? How do we build an AI that doesn't just play it safe, but one that's driven to explore the unknown? Because figuring that out, well, that's the next frontier.